And on Monday, drugs. Why this plague?
Earlier this year, 2020 was granted access to a process outsiders rarely see. From start to finish, the making of a major drug bust. Spearheaded by the federal government's Drug Enforcement Administration, this particular effort also involved state and local agents. Now, our cameras shadowed them over a period of months, and recently they closed in on a band of pushers and dealers. And tonight, Tom Gerald traces for us the twists and turns we seldom hear about when a drug bust goes down.
Put your hands up. Put your hands up. Put your hands up. Put your hands up.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Get it up. You got it in the hands. You got it in the hands. Hands up. Hands up. Drop. Hands up. Drop. There.
She got it in her hands up. Hands up. On the back. On the back.
These people are not drug dealers. They're the customers.
Oh, man. Yeah. We got it. We got it. Jack.
You're under arrest. You're under arrest. You're under arrest.
Twice a week for 3 months, beginning in January, teams from the Newark, New Jersey office of the Federal Drug Enforcement Administration began arresting heroin users in and around the city.
Looks like one deck.
Yeah, he's got another deck and a little cold, so it looks like it's cold. All right.
Arresting heroin buyers was an unusual step in an unusual operation. So much cheap and potent Chinese white heroin was flooding the Northeast that federal and local prosecutors here in Newark pool resources in a joint task force of agents led by the Drug Enforcement Administration. The prosecutors aimed to take out in one strike an entire heroin ring, from major suppliers to street pushers and even their customers. Success would call for months of close cooperation between federal and local lawmen. No turf battles, no politics. But that's not how it turned out, as we discovered while following the operation from start to finish.
Business as usual.
It began with police surveillance at this massive inner-city housing project in Newark. Among the residents, peddlers selling heroin like hotcakes to customers in cars. A drive-in drug market in plain view.
And one guy, he was out there a couple days ago. The one in the Levi jacket.
By arresting buyers moments after they left the projects and seizing their heroin, DEA picked up the first clues to the suppliers and a surprising profile of the customers.
We have computer engineers, we have healthcare workers, we have a teacher, we have a postal employee, we have welders, we have drivers, we have mechanics, we have relatives of sworn officials from the city, we have a fireman. But we've got middle America wandering over to this project, not living there, but coming in to do their business and leave. We estimate that the daily sales at this one project are between $6,000 and $10,000 a day.
This was big business. By late March, police had infiltrated the operation, and the main supplier to the dealers, some of whom are seen here, had been identified.
Jerry Ortiz is a young man, about 23 years of age. He's a heroin entrepreneur. He buys from someone, he brings it over to New Jersey, they cut it up, they repackage it, and then they sell it to these people who we have under surveillance on videotape every day. He has stated to our undercover agents that he wants to retire as a millionaire by the end of 1988.
What are your undercover men posing as? What roles are they playing in terms of infiltrating this operation?
I've got people acting as customers. I've got experienced undercover officers who are acting as wholesalers. And I've got a very experienced undercover officer who was acting as the big deal in this operation. The undercover agent was so skilled in dealing with one of the defendants that the defendant asked him to get an apartment for him. And we were very happy to do that for him, just we wired it up before he moved in.
The occupant, Ray Torres, the number 2 man. Not only was the phone tapped, but the new ceiling fan contained a room bug. Agents using this listening device learned that the heroin brand names used by the Ortiz organization matched those on the packets taken from the arrested buyers.
The brand names here, people are trying to establish much like you would with a cereal. And in the case that we're investigating now, the heroin has 2 names that we're aware of. One is Body Bag, and the other is Power.
Body Bag, the brand name on the 2-inch glassine envelope, still haunts one family 60 miles to the south and a world away from inner-city Newark. When the task force operation began last fall, Doug Heckman, an addict for 6 years, had just been buried. On November 8, 1987, at age 30, he died at home from a heroin overdose. One envelope at his feet, another unopened at his side. Both were stamped body bag. As Doug's brother and sister watched, a detective gathered up the evidence.
He said, "Look at this," and he showed it to the detective, and there was an actual stamp. I mean, like something you find in like a grocery store or a store. It was a stamp, and he said, "Damn," and he threw the bag down. He said, "This is the fourth or fifth time we've seen this over the last couple of months." It was a brand that a particular group had been selling that obviously advertised themselves, which I found a little hard to believe. They said it was white, Chinese white, body bag. It must be a dozen names for it on the street. And it's going way out of proportion. It's become a big business.
By early April, tens of thousands of dollars have been photocopied and used by DEA agents to buy heroin from Jerry Ortiz and Ray Torres. Marked money. Every serial number has been logged in case the bills show up in later drug busts. And the more the agents spend in their undercover roles, the better the heroin they receive.
We started out at a 33% heroin purity level, and by the time we made the last buy, the purity was 95%. You can't get any better heroin than that anywhere in the world, and we're buying it over here in the projects in Newark, New Jersey.
Today our goal is to attempt a purchase of 4 ounces of heroin.
4 ounces of heroin is a big order, enough for 27,000 street bags. And this undercover agent, known as BJ, hopes to overstretch Ortiz, forcing him to call up his suppliers.
This is what we're hoping, that he'll get to the point where if he doesn't have the merchandise with him, he'll jump right on the phone or go over to see his source. And then this is how we gather our information.
BJ set up to buy, but Ortiz and Torres weren't selling. They suspected the truth, that their friendly fellow dealer was really a cop. It was time to bring the 7-month operation to a head. The federal and local prosecutors agreed to simultaneously arrest 46 people linked to the Ortiz organization. 18 high-level operators would be brought to federal court, including Ortiz and his second-in-command, Ray Torres, who was in Puerto Rico at the time. The remaining 28 mostly street-level dealers, videotaped here at the projects, would be brought to local court by the Essex County prosecutor. Buyers identified through video surveillance would have their cars seized and lined up in front of the Newark courthouse. On a sleepy Tuesday morning, the dragnet was set.
Good morning, and thanks for coming in. We have
At 4 a.m. on May 3rd, Task Force Chief McCullen assembles a small army of federal, state, and local lawmen. The battle plan has changed. Only those wanted on federal warrants will be arrested.
This morning we're going to be executing 18 federal arrest warrants in New York and New Jersey. We plan our entries at all of the different locations at 6:05 a.m. I will tell you that we have some shooters in the group, so I would urge you to be careful.
We rode with one of the 6-man squads, all heavily armed and ready for trouble.
My top priority is agent safety. That's the main thing. Make sure all your ducks are in a row. Don't take any search warrant routinely.
As the teams near their arrest locations, the DEA control room in Newark comes to life.
Command center received.
And word from Puerto Rico, a team is set to arrest Ortiz's sidekick, Ray Torres.
Okay, base is ready to clear out at 6:05.
712 to all units that are in position, execute your warrants. All units that are in position, execute your warrants.
All right, let's get ready to go, guys.
But heavy traffic delays the arrest team heading for Jerry Ortiz, the ringleader. And DEA wiretaps on his Queens apartment detect a warning call from Puerto Rico, where Ray Torres has already been arrested.
Hit. Team number 1, hit. Puerto Rico's calling the house.
Yeah.
Anybody in position, hit that house.
Command center to team number 1. Puerto Rico is calling that individual now. Hit immediately. Hit immediately.
Let's go, guys. Let's go.
Yeah, go ahead. Sure. All right, get him up.
Let's go, Jerry.
Get some pants on him. Just wait, walk nice and slow here. Do you keep notes on all the evidence, where it's found at, logged in, and everything? Here, sit down. Sit here. Right here. Sit down. Who's got a card? Let's get him, Mirandized. Let's get him Mirandized.
Usted diga, se puede usar en contra de usted en una corte. ¿Entiende eso?
Sí.
We want anybody speaking in Spanish.
Mami, your phone was off the hook. Your phone was off the hook when I just called. Mami, ven acá y busca la nena.
In English.
Come and pick up the babies over here. Because the federal agents se metieron in my house. They came in looking for Jerry, and I was still.
It's all over, buddy boy.
In less than an hour, the operation was complete.
Get in and slide all the way over.
Jerry Ortiz, 25, and his wife Millie, 17, were on their way to federal court. 7 a.m. Another member of the Ortiz organization is arrested in the Newark apartment of Ray Torres. As the team collects evidence, the team leader removes the wiretap installed 2 months earlier.
That's it.
Until a few moments ago, the Ortiz operation knew this man as the Italian, a fellow dealer they were supplying. Every detail of his purchases had been carefully recorded for evidence. 9:15 a.m. Outside DEA headquarters, the arrest list is growing.
So far, we have 15 people in custody. We're still looking for the other 3, and all of the search warrants were executed. So very smoothly, very professionally.
In Task Force Chief McKellen's office, the morning's new evidence.
About 960 bags of the heroin that was being sold, similar to the heroin being sold in the projects. This little packet costs about $150. So this entire amount here was worth about $10,000. We have one of the 2 guns that were seized. And here we have some of the stamps that they use and the ink pads to mark these packages that eventually will look like this, and this is stamped power.
Also recovered from safety deposit boxes, $250,000 in cash, including the photocopied bills used by DEA to buy heroin from Jerry Ortiz.
A federal grand jury sitting in Newark last week indicted 18...
At a press conference following the arrest, Sam Alito, U.S. Attorney for Newark District, praised the task force efforts.
This case is significant not only for the charges that have been brought, but because we believe it represents a pioneering effort to take down an entire heroin distribution ring with one fell swoop.
In fact, the task force's pioneering effort had been crippled at the last minute by high-level infighting. As a result, less than half the Ortiz ring was taken out. And when the federal prisoners were marched to the U.S. courthouse, there were no heroin buyers' cars lined up outside, as envisioned by the DEA. And the 28 arrests assigned to the local prosecutor just hadn't happened. 7 months into the investigation, the Essex County prosecutor, Herb Tate, refused to arrest the dealers or the buyers, despite the task force's evidence.
The 28 individuals that had been targeted for on-the-street purchases, they did not have any more than movie camera tape. And that evidence in and of itself was not sufficient for our accepting of those cases for prosecution.
Well, the evidence that I'm aware of were undercover purchases made from these dealers. If it was not an undercover purchase, we filmed them selling packages to people who were eventually arrested in possession of it. I don't know what more we'd have to do. We've taken out the source of supply. We've taken out the distributors. The dealers are still out there, and we're waiting for Essex County to proceed against them. You can probably go back out there and buy a variety of drugs. Same dealers, same location, same people, just a new source of supply. Doing business as usual.
You know, it's what we hear all the time. All that work, all that effort, and the next day, yeah, it's business as usual.
Yeah, it certainly is. It's frustrating, and both the federal and the state authorities seem to be acting in their own best interest. And it is so annoying, and it's so difficult to get agencies to cooperate.
Yeah, and look what a good case they had. What happened to the 2 guys they did arrest?
The 2 ringleaders, Jerry Ortiz and Ray Torres, both pled guilty, and that's an example of the solidness of the case that we saw built in this particular case, Barbara. Now, Ortiz said at one time to one of the undercover police, by the end of this year, he hoped to be a millionaire and retire. He's now looking at 20 years in prison.
Thank you, Tom.
And on this subject, an important program note. Drugs, A Plague Upon the Land was a critically acclaimed ABC News special, first broadcast last April. It can be seen again tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern Time. And then this coming Monday night at 8 p.m. Eastern, a new report